Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conference on the 20th anniversary of 2004 European Union Enlargement, looking back, looking forward at University of Coimbra. We invite the Vice-Rector for External Relations and Alumni of the University of Coimbra, Professor João Nuno Calvão da Silva, to deliver the opening speech.
Good morning to you all. Your Excellency, the Minister of State and Foreign Affairs of Portugal, that is going to be here soon, government representatives of the 10 countries that joined the EU in 2004, Mrs. Secretary of State for European Affairs, Mr. President and Mrs. Coordinator of the Parliamentary Committee of European Affairs, ambassadors of the 10 countries that joined the EU in 2004, Director of the Faculty of Law, Director of the Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences, Vice Director of the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, Vice Director of the Faculty of Pharmacy, Vice Director of the Faculty of Economy, President of the European Studies Association of Coimbra, my dear Professor Manuel Porto, dear representatives from the Coimbra Academic Association and the Erasmus Student Network of Coimbra, esteemed professors, dear students and staff, esteemed journalists. Let me start by thanking the ambassadors of the 10 countries that joined the EU in 2004 for giving us the honor of hosting this high-level conference at University of Coimbra with such prestigious speakers and high political dignitaries. I would also like to thank our government officials for their presence, the Secretary of State for European Affairs, Inês Domingos, dear friend, and the Minister of State and Foreign Affairs, Paulo Rangel. Your presence really shows the national and international importance of this event. The conference, held at this beautiful Colégio da Trindade, is of enormous importance and actuality. A review of the 20 years since accession made by leading political, diplomatic and civic figures from the 10 countries is a fundamental reflection on the future of the EU. The moderation by Professor Jonatas Machado, one of the world's leading figures in European Union law, will further contribute to a debate that is sure to be enriching. The European Union, as it is called today, was founded 67 years ago, and its founding fathers made no secret of their political purpose. In fact, Jean Monnet and others made no secret of the fact that a political union was essential to guarantee peace and prosperity on the old continent. After almost 7 decades, the balance sheet is clearly one of success. Regional conflicts, for sure, but no more world wars on European soil. Various economic and social difficulties, but more and more people are looking for Europe's borders to live. The European project unites us around the values of dialogue, inclusion, and ideals of democracy. In an increasingly dangerous world, we need to strengthen European integration because freedom and democracy are not necessarily eternal. That's why it is urgent to think about what has failed and what challenges need to be taken up so that young people here can live in freedom as we have had until now. Increasing poverty, deepening of inequalities, so many left behind, with no hope of a better life. Let's not be surprised that populism and extremism are on the rise and can jeopardize European and democratic ideals for which we have fought so hard. But even with many European citizens living poorly, Europe remains the El Dorado for so many. And with an aging population, we very much need this immigration, which must be welcomed in a humanist and solidarity-based effort that the Judeo-Christian traditions demands, within the framework of the principle of realism that demand for true integration imposes, of course. Listening to the countries that joined 20 years ago also allows us to better define the direction of the EU, a player that must become increasingly central in the international order. Further enlargements of the European family are crucial to this centrality, and today's conference will certainly provide many lessons in this regard. Long live the University of Coimbra, long live the European Union. Thank you all.
Thank you. We now give the floor to Her Excellency, the Secretary of State for European Affairs, Inês Domingos.
Dear Vice Rector, Professor João Calvão da Silva, dear ministers and state secretaries, my dear colleagues, ambassadors, professors, students, dear friends, let me thank first the ambassadors for inviting me here to open this conference on this momentous anniversary on the enlargement, together with Vice Rector João Calvão da Silva. It is an honor, truly, to be speaking here at this university where my grandfather studied, and that played such a crucial role in the development of Portugal from its founding years and the development of science, both in Portugal and in Europe. Today, I would like to reflect on the motto that you have chosen for this conference, looking back, looking forward. It is simple, but it's very powerful, because there is much to celebrate. The Big Bang enlargement in 2004 was an important moment for our internal market. It was a crucial moment for the connection between people, as we in Portugal met people from the completely opposite end of Europe. It was important for developing cultural, economic, academic relations. As we are in a university, it's never useless to remember how important the Erasmus program is. So 20 years on, with all these achievements, looking to the future is also fundamental. And we must keep our eyes well focused on the way ahead because of the enormous challenges that the Vice Rector has also very well mentioned. And firstly, I would like to remember, as we all know, that we must remain committed to what is the foundation of our European Union, which is the promotion of our shared values, the respect for human dignity, freedom, equality, the rule of law, and human rights. And those are the pillars on which our support to Ukraine is founded. Portugal will support Ukraine, and that will be a crucial and fundamental pillar of our future in the EU, and we will support Ukraine for as long as necessary and as much as necessary for Ukraine to prevail. This is a fundamental condition to ensure the respect for international law and the rules-based international order, and it is imperative, and it is crucial for Europe and the European Union. And as we start a new institutional cycle, we will continue to face unprecedented challenges alongside the unstable political situation. So we need to be bold in our ambition and resolute in the implementation of our agenda. And there's much to discuss. Reinforcing our commitment to the environmental and digital transitions, this is not optional. It is compatible with the increase in competitiveness, and it is not optional. Many of our countries have experienced the different effects of climate change. In the south with fires, in the east with the floods, and we know how important it is to mitigate and to adapt. That will be a significant challenge. Boosting the productivity and resilience of our economies is not an option either. In 2019, the European Union countries had about 70% of US GDP per capita. That means that being in Europe, we are 30% less wealthy and less prosperous than our American colleagues. That is not acceptable. And that means that we cannot keep people in the EU. So that is crucially important to change. We need to close the technological gap with other regions and particularly with the US. At the same time, we need to remain open to other regions. We need to diversify our sources of exports, our sources of imports and our exports, and that is also crucial because that really, truly is part of what the EU has been. An open economy, not only amongst ourselves, but also open to the rest of the world. Of course, we must reinforce our security and defense industrial base, which too can support innovation. And finally, we cannot shy away from dealing with one of the huge challenges that we're facing, which is the demographic winter that we are facing. It has heavy costs not only for security and health systems, but also for productivity, for our capacity to innovate, and for our dynamism. So we need to face this with no fear and consider novel ways to fight the demographic decline. For all this, we need a budget that matches our ambition, that reflects our diversity, that guarantees level playing field. We must be careful about policy changes to ensure that we maintain the level playing field amongst member states. And we need more investment, both public and private. On the private front, we need to deepen the capital markets and make our banking systems more resilient. And on the public front, we must be brave and agree on new sources of public funding. And we can have no fear about discussing things that seem very difficult, like public debt, public common debt, which incidentally can also be helpful to deepen our capital markets. And we cannot forget that it was a point that was made in the Draghi's report, and it's a very important one. Finally, we are going through, and reflecting precisely on what happened 20 years ago, we are currently going through a new momentum in the enlargement, a bit like those days. We had the first intergovernmental conferences with Ukraine and Moldova last June. We had an intergovernmental conference with Montenegro, the first in many years, and first cluster negotiations with Albania just a few weeks ago, and several of us were there to celebrate. Our countries know well that the reforms required by candidate countries are lengthy and difficult and require hard work. There are instruments, we know, to help them go through that. What we also know is that we need to make the EU ready to receive those members. And so we need to pursue financial and institutional reforms that make our decision processes easier. Ultimately, though, we all know, all here today, we all know that the rewards far exceed the difficulties and that the enlargement remains one of the most popular, the most successful, and actually quite unique policy in the world. Where else do countries unite in such a deep way and keep enlarging to other countries because other countries want to join? It is an extraordinary policy, let's not forget that, and one that has had many successes. So today we're here to celebrate and to also reflect that the enlargement remains a geopolitical imperative for Europe and a potent tool to increase also the prosperity of the whole of the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now begin the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Professor Jonatas Machado, Director of the Faculty of Law of the University of Coimbra.
Good morning. After the protocol speeches, addresses, salutations, and welcoming remarks, I would immediately proceed to the panel, but I just want to say that it's a privilege and an honor as the Dean of the Law School to welcoming you all in our Trinity College, Colégio da Trindade, and I also, as a law professor, European Union law professor, I'm looking forward to listen to the remarks, the reflections on this very interesting topic of the accession of 10 new states to the European Union in 2004 that we now celebrate. I have reflected this with my students, but now I will give the floor to those distinguished representatives of these countries for them to present their own reflections on this topic. And I will start by the Czechia representative, Mr. Martin Dvorak, Minister of European Affairs.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, students, dear friends, Mr. Dean, dear Ines. I'm really very honored to have this opportunity to be with you today, and I'm looking forward for the debate. Just to be absolutely fair, I was listening, Ines, what she was speaking about, and I just erased whatever I have in my speech, and almost nothing remains. So I just wanted to say that really, it is when the European Union is charting a course for the future with regards to the recent elections to the European Parliament and the subsequent ongoing formation of a new European Commission, this big challenge, but also with the elections in the United States just around the corner. I think also this we can touch in our debate. This year marks a particularly special occasion, not only for my country, Czechia, but also for 9 other countries, as 20 years ago we were granted membership in the European Union. Over the past 2 decades, all 10 countries have benefited from their membership, be it in the areas of economic growth, quality of life, security assurances. Adding 10 new countries to the Union was by no means an easy task, and it required a lot of effort and preparation. Despite this, the Big Bang enlargement in 2004 turned out to be a great success, which I firmly believe can be replicated in the future. Speaking about the future, we should support the next enlargement process in one of the most profound contributions we can make as members of the European Union. It is essential that the door to EU remains open to those who meet the necessary criteria and share our values of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. I firmly believe that the Western Balkans countries, Ukraine, Moldova, and maybe also Georgia, Armenia, they deserve the same opportunity and chance for deeper European integration, just as we were given 20 years ago. Looking ahead to the future, I'm optimistic about what we as a Union can achieve. Competitiveness, green and digital transition, security, potential reforms, and enlargement are challenges that require all of us to act in unison. In this regard, the EU has always shown that together we are stronger and more resilient. I believe we will remain committed to building a united, democratic, and prosperous Europe. The road ahead will not always be easy, but our shared values, which have carried us this far, will continue to guide us as we face the challenges of tomorrow. Thank you, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
I will now give the floor to our distinguished representative of Lithuania, Mr. Simonas Setūnas, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Vice Rector. Thank you, Ines. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm coming from Lithuania, probably the most distant country here around the table from other part of Europe. But distance doesn't matter when our values and hearts are together. And listening to Ines, I was thinking how important it is to look back at the history. You mentioned that your grandfather studied in this university, but I was listening and thinking, actually, I have no university where my grandfather studied because my grandfather was not able to study because we were occupied. And part of my family, they were either deported to Siberia, part of the family was escaped to the United States. So I was thinking, what does it mean for us, enlargement? For us, enlargement was going back to normal civilized political life. Initially, I think that we thought that we are joining European big economic market for economic benefits. And yes, it was absolutely a right decision for us to join your internal market, to have investments, to have expansion of the market. But probably was much more. And now, just 20 years after that, we're thinking, what does it mean? In principle, we joined the rule of law community. And this is the basis of why we need to preserve our union now, because there are a lot of temptations from outside and inside to challenge the union and to challenge the principle of rule of law at the international order, like you, Ines, were mentioning, or you, Vice Rector, but internally as well by populists and radicals. So for us, joining European Union was not only economic logic or temptation. It was something much more, going back to the family of the normal political, civilized civil society, and going back to the rule of law. So I think that Lithuanian people, they were super happy doing the decision 20 years ago, and they are still super happy with the decisions that they made now. 79% of the Lithuanians still support being the members of the European Union. 91% of Lithuanians, they think that that was absolutely right economically decision. But I think it's much more, and especially you understand in a particularly difficult times what we have now, being part of the family. Let's say when we are actually the frontline countries, we don't have here the Latvian colleagues or Estonian colleagues at the table, but we have Polish colleagues, so we have, but in principle, we are the frontline countries that experience everyday challenges. Was it a hybrid migration, or it is other provocation from our neighbors? So, and it's so good to have support from the other European member states trying to defend the values that we all defend. So for us, joining European Union was much more than an economic decision that we need to preserve, especially now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cyprus, Mr. Andreas Kakouris, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much, and let me first of all apologize for my voice. Until yesterday there was no voice, so it is improved, so I do apologize for that, but many thanks for the kind invitation to be here. It's an absolute pleasure. Minister, Secretary of State, colleagues around the table, Excellencies. I'm going to start off on a personal note. I was honored and privileged to be Cyprus's ambassador to Ireland between 2002 and 2006. So I was present at the ceremony when Cyprus, along with 9 other countries, joined the European Union. And for me, the poignancy of that particular event was the following: to see the flags of the existing 15 member states, plus the 10, and the flag of the European Union being raised simultaneously at the same speed was something very special, because the message was, it didn't matter whether you were a big member of the European Union, an island like Cyprus or Malta, Central Europe or Northern Europe, you are part of a family. And for me, the European Union is a mosaic, and like any mosaic which has large and small pieces, each piece is unique. And each piece is part of that integral message and that mosaic. And it's in that respect that I look at Cyprus's position within the European Union as well. We're a small part of that mosaic, but an important part in a part of the world that is vital to the European Union as well. And if I can say, we're all linked by history in the sense that we're all part of Europe, but we were united by choice. And that's an important element to remember for all of us that are in the European Union. And this year, of course, is historic. It's 20 years, and I can't believe 20 years have passed since we've joined. It was the culmination for us of a long pursuit, a strategic goal of persistent efforts, not always easy, but I think I speak for everybody else around this table when I say it wasn't easy. But we're there, and each and every one of us is contributing to this European family. It's true today, amidst the escalating conflict in the Middle East, Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine and the unabating political, economic and social pressures, the European Union's cohesion, its unity and its raison d'etre are being put to the test. And as I said, we should not forget that we're an association of states which have pooled their sovereignty voluntarily on the basis of common principles and values, as well as on the basis of a vision for a common future. And it is this peace project which is unique. It has laid the foundations for peace, justice, and prosperity on our continent. From Cyprus's point of view, 20 years on, we can see the positive effect, we can see the catalytic changes that have happened in all aspects of our daily life. But also as a country that is, regrettably after 50 years, still under occupation, there is that psychological sense of belonging as well, the solidarity that we receive from all of our European Union colleagues as well. And from our perspective, I think it has strengthened us diplomatically and politically. When I see what Cyprus is doing in the Middle East by being able to help those in needs there, that's part of what each and every one of us can do. That's part of the value added that each and every one of us has. And it's been my experience over the 20 years that we've been in the European Union that it is a project that we are privileged and honoured to be part of, and looking forward to how this incredible family of nations moves forward. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but as far as I'm concerned, after these three first speeches, I feel already rewarded for being here. But now I will give the floor to the Slovenia representative, Mr. Markus Tusin, State Secretary for Bilateral and European Affairs, Minister of Foreign and European Affairs. Please.
Thank you very much, and I hope you'll have the same impression after my speech as well. Thank you very much for the invitation to this beautiful city, to beautiful university. It's always a pleasure to be in Portugal, and always a pleasure to speak about European Union. And that kind of event is a very good opportunity for a reflection of the past and a projection to the future. If I remember 20, 30, 40 years ago, I was a small boy growing up in socialistic part of Yugoslavia at that time. And I still remember that, you know, me, my family, everybody around me, we were dreaming of, you know, really becoming an independent country in European Union one day. So it was no surprise that when the time came, when we had a referendum about joining the EU, the referendum was confirmed with a huge majority, 92 or something %. So everybody wanted to become part of the European Union. And looking from perspective at that time to now, Slovenia indeed developed into a very modern society. We are leaders in many fields, from IT, artificial intelligence, pharmaceutical industry. I simply cannot imagine these parallel realities. You know, on Netflix you have series with parallel realities, and I cannot imagine living in another one, because I would argue that regarding the geopolitical situation in the world, in every reality there would be tensions and wars around us. And I don't want to imagine a parallel reality where we are on our own, where we are not part of the European Union. So we don't have friends with whom we can decide how to tackle those issues. 10 years ago, European Union was rewarded a Nobel Peace Prize for peace. And the main reason for this was integration process. So I would even say that European integration process is probably the most important peace project globally in history. There was no such similar union of countries where the countries would unite together and there would be peace among them. So there were wars around us, but there was no conflict among any member states of European Union since since the 50s when the coal and steel community was founded. Because of this and because of our history, I think we have an obligation to share this message and to actively promote the enlargement of the European Union, because we know in the middle of European Union we have a relatively big geographical area that's not part of European Union, namely Western Balkans. On our eastern flanks we have 3 countries that want to become part of the European Union. They're not. We need to help them. We really need to actively help them. And I hope such conferences are a very good opportunity for this awareness and that we unite in this thinking that we need to help those countries to become EU members one day. Just one more thing. There is a different perspective. When we were negotiating to become members, we all wanted to become members. There was no other alternative. Now, looking in Western Balkans, there are other alternatives. There is money coming from other sources. There is political influence coming from the other sources. So and this is very important. It's a big mistake. Keep telling them you will become members when you will fulfill all the criteria. Good, this is true, but we need to also help them to fulfill these criteria because otherwise they will go somewhere else at the end of the day. If I may, I will conclude with a joke. There is one joke in Balkans going around for some time. It's about misunderstanding. So how Europe doesn't understand Western Balkans, and this applies to everybody else as well. So the bureaucrat, the inspector from European Commission comes to a small Bosnian village to inspect the farm. And he inspects the farm, and then he speaks with the farmer afterwards, and he says, look, you have 127 goats, but according to our statistics, you will have to make some improvements in order to keep receiving EU funds. So your fence needs to be 7% higher. The percentage of grain needs to be 5% more. They have to have 10% more space and so on, so that your goats can, move around more easily and so on, and that you will apply to all European standards. And then the inspector goes away, and the farmer speaks to wife, and the wife asks, so how did it go? And he said, yeah, it was very smart guy. With all the statistics, and I know what to do now in order to make my farm better, but there is one problem. He was keep speaking about the goats. We have cows on our farm. So this is the, it's a joke that illustrates this not understanding really the region of Western Balkans or Eastern Europe. And we need to, as this group, so the new member states, although we're here for 20 years, we need to translate this to Brussels and to explain them why this understanding is important for the new enlargement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I will now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Poland, Mrs. Magdalena Czarnerka. Sorry. I will try harder next time. Under Secretary of State for European Affairs, Chancellery of the Prime Minister, please.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And it's also an honor to be here in this beautiful historical place, very important on the map of education in EU. And I was thinking when I came here that if the enlargement happened 5 years earlier, probably I will be a student here. But it happened in 2004, so I didn't have a chance to study abroad. I had to study in Poland, since we weren't a member of EU when I was starting my studies. So this is one of the benefits of being a part of EU, the free movement of people. Now young people can choose whenever they want to study, whatever they want to do. Our companies are growing, economy is growing, the internal market, it's also a great success. And I have the honor to speak in the name of the country which is the biggest beneficiary of the enlargement of 2004 in the terms of economy. That's true if we see the numbers. Poland won the most, especially in the terms of being a part of the internal market. But we have to keep in mind that we are no longer freshmen in the class. It's already been 20 years, and what we are facing now is the new enlargement. As in Polish government, I'm responsible for the preparation and conducting Polish presidency in the European Council, which comes in 2 months. Of course, one of the priorities and one of the goals will be next conversations about enlargement. And I absolutely agree with my dear friend from Slovenia that we need to talk and need to convince other countries to be a part of EU, and that's what Prime Minister Donald Tusk is doing. Just yesterday he was in Serbia having difficult conversation over there, but the result was that yes, we are looking to be a part, being a member of EU. Of course, in EU, Poland is the best advocate of Ukraine, and I know that here are different groups of interest. There are some countries who are more interested of having Ukraine at first as a member of EU. There are some countries who cross fingers for the Western Balkans. And what I see as a challenge for the next years or maybe months is a decision how we should move on with the process. Should we again do the Big Bang and do the enlargement, having on board 9 countries at the same moment, or should we do it country by country? And I think that's the decision that we are facing, and we really need to make some decisions about it. It's been already 20 years. That means that as a part of our societies, we have already people who are 20, 30 years old, and they don't remember not being a part of EU. And that creates a big space for populism, fake news, the influence outside of EU. We feel it in Poland a lot. I think in other countries also, especially from this 10 new old member states, you feel this influence. We saw what happened in UK. Before joining the government, I was working as a journalist and I was covering the news about Brexit. And we saw there very, very clearly how on the basis of the fake news about EU, disaster can happen. So what I see also as a challenge for the next years for us is to tell the truth about EU and also teach people how to choose between, how to divide true or false, because nowadays, in the days of AI, in the days of living in social media, it's not so clear how to choose between true or false. I think in terms of a new enlargement, also we have to be honest how the journey to be a member of EU looks like. All of us were part of the very long process. In terms of Poland, it took 10 years of the negotiations to be a part of the EU, 10 years of very tough negotiations. I was lucky to just watch it on TV because I was a teenager at that time. But my colleagues from the government, they are telling honestly, it was very hard. And I think we have to speak straight from the heart to our friends who want to be a part of the EU, that you need to do some reforms, you need to put in a shape that we have in the EU. And sitting here in this table, I'm thinking that this is what EU is about, to gather people from all over Europe, from all over the continent around the same values. And what we also experience as Poland, that we had some turbulences with rule of law, and there was EU, the one to guide us and help us to be back on track. And yes, the message is clear right now. Poland is back. We are again a leader of EU. We are again ready to conduct the presidency in the EU. And I'm happy to be part of discussion. This is what's EU about. Let's have different opinions, but at the end of the day, let's think how to move forward. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Magdalena, she touched a very interesting point. After the enlargement, we start receiving students from all these countries, and in the beginning it looked a bit awkward and strange, but now it's commonplace. It's business as usual, and it's very enriching to us. It's really wonderful, and also the mobility of professors, and so let's move. It's very interesting. Now we have the representative of Hungary, Mr. Martin Ugrodzki, Deputy State Secretary, Prime Minister's Cabinet Office. Please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very happy to be part of this conversation. And I dare to say that in a good EU tradition, we agree on about 90% of the things which have been already said. And but I would like to underline again what Magdalena also highlighted, that it's so much better to gather around the table and discuss all the differences than to go to war. And this brings us to the fundamental success of the EU as a peace project after the Second World War. And if there's one thing that should remind us how important that is, this achievement that we're gathering around the white tables instead of the battlefields, is that what we see to the east of Europe these days. And this should come to mind all the time, that how successful the EU was in diffusing these kind of conflicts, which might be less important these days, but still we deal with them in a much more civilized way. The EU as an economic project, I think, is another question. And many, many inefficiencies remain when it comes to the single market, when it comes to the capital markets union, when it comes to the economic governance of Europe. And both the Enrico Letta report and the Mario Draghi report highlighted some of the structural issues that we are facing. And of course, we're having a debate in a good EU tradition that how to deal with these structural deficiencies and how to move forward. And that brings me to the third element of the EU, which is the political project, which remains challenged, I dare to say. I'm not surprised that you see so many different political opinions in the EU, and even in these countries which have been members for 20 years, you see that more and more of us are starting to take ownership of our EU membership, which means that we're bringing our opinion to these discussions. Some of us are trying to lead the European Union, just as we heard, and everybody is speaking up. And everybody's speaking up because they're still trying to make sure that their national interests are being met, and their national interests are being met in a way which is compatible with all the other EU member states, because after all, we're in the same club, we're in the same alliance at the end of the day. And this also charts the future to some extent, because as the political process becomes more and more important, and it was Jean-Claude Juncker, previous president of the European Commission, who said that he wanted to have a political commission. Well, he got it. Now you have the current president of the European Commission who wants to have a geopolitical commission, and it seems like she's getting it. So I'm not surprised that the political component of the EU is getting more and more loud. It gets more and more divisive occasionally. And of course, as with the media, and I'm not trying to put blame anywhere here, but it's rather about the divisions that you read about and not on all the points on which we agree. So in the long run, I think, and this is the final thought for me for now, is that as the decision-making process in the EU gets more political, it's crucial that we assign accountability and legitimacy to where it belongs. And this is also part of the institutional discussion that we are having within the European Union, that where the real power should lie. And bad news is this is still up for discussion. This is still undecided. And if we are ever to work this out, we will have to have significant, meaningful, and structured debates on what kind of EU do we want. Do we want an EU which is a means to an end, which would be to achieve a prosperous, safe, and secure Europe in the long run, and we can use the EU as a tool to achieve this goal, or whether the EU is a goal by itself, and then we should define our policies in a way which align with these expectations. I hope for the first. I'm expecting the second, but let's see how it goes. Because I think at the end of the day, the crucial thing is that EU membership serves all of us. And yes, occasionally it's painful to come to conclusions, and it's painful to come to a compromise, but so far we were able to do it. And I dare to think, and I hope, that this produced better results at the end. Maybe these results were not as quick and not as dramatic as we anticipated, but I think this also comes down to the fact whether we are trying to remain pragmatic or whether we will be a bit more ideological when we're going to look at all the solutions that the EU can propose to all of our countries who are in this part of the world and destined to cooperation. And the really final thought would be that I always say, which is the motto of the European Union, that we are united in diversity. And we tend to focus on the united part a little bit more these days, but diversity remains equally important. And this is the real strength of Europe, that we're a kaleidoscope of 27 different countries, even more nationalities. And so far, we were able to work this out in a way which was beneficial for all of us. All the 10 member states who have joined, I think, are quite happy with the fact that we were able to do this. And all of us are better off than we were 20 years ago. And this is the most crucial and the most important thing at the end of the day. Looking forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for underlining the importance of compromise. Let's hope that we don't need some professor from America teaching us the art of the deal. As Donald Trump wrote, you know. So we have to develop the art of compromise without needing someone to teach us the art of the deal. Now I give the floor to Malta representative, Mr. Leandro Borg, Director General of the EU Coordination Department, Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs and Trade.
Thank you. And good morning. Thank you for hosting this event in this beautiful location. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here and to commemorate this significant milestone in our history. As many of the speakers before me have been saying, we are here for a reason, because of course we're connected by history, and we're connected through our unity and the diversity of the different member states that we come from. Of course, this was a very momentous decision of our nations 2 decades ago to embark on this transformative journey. It was not simply an administrative change, it was not simply a policy decision, but it was an inspiration to participate in broader narrative, one that is rooted in stability, cooperation, and shared prosperity. And I think we can all agree that all 10 nations that joined in 2004, we have seen prosperity and economic growth, and we are better off through this membership. Over the last 20 years, I come from the smallest member state, of course, as everyone knows, the member state at the periphery of the Union. Also right in the middle of the Mediterranean, acting as a bridge between Europe and Africa. So we have quite a diverse tapestry, quite a colored history, and the fact that our nation has decided to join the European Union 20 years ago was, again, a very important step in our diverse history, and we embarked on this profound growth and transformative process. Our integration in the Union has been a catalyst for economic development. We have unlocked access to the single market and attracted substantial investment. And nowadays, we enjoy one of the strongest growth rates in the European Union with virtually no unemployment. So this is in itself a testament of the opportunities that EU membership has provided. Of course, beyond the economic gains, because it's not the only thing that matters, EU membership has offered profound benefits both in the social and cultural aspects as well. We have mentioned the freedom to live, work, and study anywhere within the EU, which has given opportunities to youths within the Union, which has also helped in fostering a generation of globally minded citizens. Apart from these visible gains, of course, I think the biggest change that we have experienced is that we got a seat at the table. A small member state with virtually no major economic growth, we have managed to gain a seat at the table. It was a crucial win that we have had the opportunity to be able to participate in global issues, global discussions on things that were to affect not just Malta, but the continent and the world. I think it would be a common agreement between us that none of us would have managed to navigate through the challenges that we have faced over the past years alone, be it COVID, be it the immense effects of the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East. So I think the fact that we are part of a family, a bigger union, gives us the ability also to act in unison. Also, despite our small size, we also have been able to lead the Council of the European Union. I have fond memories of our Council presidency back in 2017, and despite being small, and some would say that voices of small member states are difficult to be heard in such a great union, I think it also depends on how you manage to build relationships within the European Union. Of course, on this occasion, it is not only a time for reflection and nostalgia. It is also an opportunity to look ahead and contemplate our role in a changing Europe. We are all aware of the huge geopolitical challenges that we are facing, the crises in Ukraine and Middle East, as I mentioned before, but also international challenges like migration, climate change, which remain on top of our agenda. I think that as a bloc, we need to continue to adapt and reconsider and sometimes recalibrate our policies and perspectives to act effectively for the benefit of all and in respect of the principle of solidarity. Of course, like every family, we have different views, we have sometimes competing interests between us, but what makes the European Union special is that we always manage to find an agreement and act together. So I think if we were to sum up the benefit of membership, that would be that we are part of a bigger family, that we look out for each other, and we always try to find the perfect solution, even if it doesn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Dr. Kristi Raik, Deputy Director and Head of the Foreign Policy Program, International Center for Defense and Security, Adjunct Professor of International Relations, University of Turku.
Thank you very much, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here. It turns out I'm the only think tanker on the panel, so I'm not even formally representing the government. But let me share my views on today's topic. When Estonia was preparing to join the EU more than 20 years ago, I was a young PhD student, and I was writing my dissertation about the EU's Eastern enlargement. And I remember very well at the time, in Estonia we actually had very lively debates about the benefits of EU membership. And Estonia was the most skeptical of the candidate countries at the time, having doubts about the potential loss of sovereignty as an EU member state above all. But of course, in the end, we decided in favor of EU membership, and as member state, I can say public support for the EU in Estonia actually increased. And today we can confidentially say that Estonia has benefited a lot, as we have heard from the other member states' experiences as well. Let me give you just one figure. Before accession, Estonia's GDP was 48% of the average of then 15 member states. And today we are getting closer to 90% of EU average. And we are actually prepared to become a net payer with the next enlargement, if not before. And I think we should see this as an achievement, that we have been catching up and we have been developing very fast as members of the EU. So indeed now it is enlargement that is again among the priorities of the EU. Many things are different this time. We have a major war in Europe in one of the candidate countries, and we talk about the geopolitical enlargement. The element of geopolitics and security was there, of course, also with the previous one, but nobody talked about geopolitical enlargement back then. Now what it means, fundamentally, I would say, is that with the next enlargement, the EU has entered the geopolitical competition that is unfolding in our neighborhood. And it is not something that the EU wanted to have, this geopolitical competition. But it is there. It is there in Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, also in the Western Balkans. There are other major players that are trying to gain more influence, that are wishing to be dominant in these areas next to the EU, and whose values are different from ours. So whether the next enlargement will be successful will be really crucial for the future of European order and European security order. Ukraine is the most significant of the candidate countries, simply because of its size, its geopolitically central location. So if we fail to integrate Ukraine to Europe and to the EU, I'm afraid we will actually see the whole European security order, which has served us so well in the past decades, unraveling and losing credibility. If the values and principles of the EU and of European security order will fail in Ukraine, then they will lose credibility in all Europe. So that is what is at stake, and that's why it is so vital for all of us, and not only in the countries that are closest geographically to Ukraine, to make the next enlargement a success. One of the elements that is kind of similar to the previous enlargement is that for us, accession to the EU and NATO went hand in hand. And this time, again, it is not only the EU that needs to enlarge, but also NATO. And of course, it is even more crucial now because We have the war going on in Ukraine, and we have the discussion about how to reach a sustainable peace in Ukraine. The EU is one vital element of how Ukraine can have a future that is peaceful and democratic, but the EU alone will not be able to solve the security problems, and the EU alone will not be able to provide the security guarantees that our Eastern candidate countries will need in future to have a sustainable peace. Having said many things are different with the next enlargement, I also want to say some things remain the same. There is still conditionality. The candidate countries have to do their reforms, their homework, and it is in nobody's interest, also not in the interest of the candidate countries, to make concessions there. After all, it's also the citizens in Ukraine or in the Western Balkans countries who want to have rule of law and who want to have a well-functioning administration, etc. But where we need to be more creative, I think, is to see how the enlargement process can be reformed in order to make it more dynamic, in order to make sure that there is progress step by step. We know that achieving full membership will take time for the candidate countries, but they need to have the sense that the perspective is real and that they are making steps towards the goal of accession. And here I want to wish a lot of courage to the Polish presidency in bringing this agenda forward, and also in finding ways to keep integrating the candidate countries in EU policies and processes before they achieve full membership. And defense, for example, is one area where it is very important to integrate Ukraine already as a very capable country with a very fast developing defense industry, and they are already taking part in the EU defense cooperation programs. So these are like the big, really crucial challenges that the EU is facing, enlargement, but then also defense. They are connected to each other with this great power competition that is unfolding in the world and which is very much also present in our neighboring countries. The EU needs to step up its ability to have an influence and to make a stronger contribution to European security through also enlargement policy as one element. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovakia, Mrs. Petra Vargová, Directorate General of European Affairs, Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Thank you for bringing us here to this beautiful and historic city and University of Coimbra, and for a warm welcome. I'm really glad and I feel privileged to be here to commemorate the 20th anniversary of accession of 10 that time candidate countries in the European Union, called or well known as a Big Bang. On a short personal note, if you allow me, this is for me also a very pleasant and memorable occasion, since in fact my diplomatic career started here. I was posted here in 2000 during the Portuguese presidency, the first half of the year. And I remember this was a very dynamic period because all candidate countries that time sent an extra diplomat to reinforce their missions. We were following the agenda of the presidency very closely, and we were, of course, in close contact with member states representatives and among ourselves as well. And so this is my kind of personal looking back, very positive one, but that would be also probably my kind of lessons learned, that to build the sufficient administrative or institutional capacity is really important for a candidate country, to have a pool of stable pool of competent diplomats and experts dealing with EU agenda, with acquis communautaire, And this is not an easy task, and neither sometimes for member states to really maintain the professional and motivated staff. And plus, as a member state, you have to ensure that you have also that you are well represented in the EU institutions at the proportionate level. Well, every enlargement and accession process is taking place in a certain geopolitical situation and setup. And looking back in 2004, I think that the common denominator for all of us, for member states at that time, and also candidate countries, was a genuine and deep desire to reunify the continent, the European continent. That was divided for more than 40 years in Eastern and Western blocs, and especially this was valid for countries from Central and Eastern Europe. The fall of the communist regime, the collapse of Soviet Union was completed by the process of democratization and establishing of market economy, and plus, we went through a very intense accession process and transposition of EU legislation. And I also believe that it was very important that everyone, whether it was member states or candidate countries, they found the enlargement beneficial. No doubt that candidate countries set the full membership in the Euro-Atlantic community as their strategic goal. And sometimes we know that the process was really difficult, and reforms that we had to undergo were sometimes painful. But at the time, if the member states were looking at us only through the purely budgetary lines, I mean from the point of view of the impact on the EU budget, I have my doubts we would be sitting around the table in 2004. But I also believe that the idea of strengthened and expanded single market was very attractive for everyone, by really perceived as something positive. And today, despite the fact that we are still having issues with the completion of a single market, because this is a process, of course, it is the world's largest integrated market, accounting for almost 18% of global GDP. Businesses offers the goods and services to more than 440 million European citizens. And in nutshell, the enlarged single market has brought very significant economic benefits, and it has been and continues to be a fundamental source of growth and job creation. So I will stop here, and I will leave some other comments for a later stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, when I was invited to moderate this panel, I had no idea that I would have a table set in front of me with such a banquet of tasty and nutritious food for thought. So we had the two discourses, two speeches as appetizers or Vorspeise. Now we had the main course, or the Hauptgericht, and now we will have the dessert. And for dessert, my question is, do you think that the European Union is well equipped to deal with the youth problems, the youth questions? How can we motivate the young people to really care about the European integration and not to disparage it, not to downplay its importance? So in 1 minute or 2 minutes, could you think, you know, off script, but not off the record. We present your thoughts on this. We will follow the same order. Please.
Thank you. Czechia is in a little bit specific situation, I guess, because the younger population we do have, the more are they believing in values presented by European Union. So I don't see saying it is a problem for us to attract young generation to be a fan of European Union. What I see as one of the biggest efforts given to us by European Union membership is Erasmus program. I think it was really something what opened the door for our youth, and I'm father of two daughters, both of them passed through Erasmus program, one in Sweden, one in Great Britain. One came back with one young British boy, and I saw how deeply they changed their mind, their vision, what they're thinking about European Union, about Czechia, about the world and global issues. And I think this is something what we really have to keep. And what I'd like to add is also we have to enlarge this program for Western Balkans and future candidate states as soon as possible, because I think this is something what is really opening not only door, but also the eyes for the young people. There are a lot of social problems what we have to solve. I'm not sure whether the European Union is able to bring some solution in housing, for example, what is now the new idea of President Ursula von der Leyen. But what I see as the biggest profit is better access to education all around Europe. So this is something what we have to keep and we have to promote for our young generation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Statunas?
Yes, thank you. Well, about Erasmus, I think it's the same in Lithuania. 41,000 of Lithuanian young people, they used Erasmus, traveled. I'm sure they are here in Portugal. They not only coming for a nice country, but to study as well. But I'm thinking in general for our young generation or our young people, Europe is a different project already. Because for myself, Europe was like a dream, because for us to travel even to Poland was a big achievement of your life, because we had the real borders there. We were behind the Iron Curtain, and then after we became independent, still were a big problem. But now the young generation, they don't even, understand how it was difficult, and they don't cherish what they have. They can freely travel to Porto from Riga or Vilnius. They can freely use the same cell phones with the same tariffs. They have the same euro, and they can apply to every university. So for them, it's kind of European Union. It's like a granted what they have. But the biggest problem is how to engage them into European politics, because they see European politics or making of European politics like a very complicated project. It is a very complicated project for ourselves. Like, we sit in the councils and we negotiate, and I can disclose with Petra, we were colleagues negotiating a lot of legal acts in Coreper 1 formations and beyond. But how to make for young European people engage in the politics, frankly, I don't know. And I think that communities of young generation is different. One is in the member states who join European Union. So I think that our youngsters, they are looking still at Europe in a different angle, like, yes, ability to travel, universities, and how the young people from the old member states are looking at European politics also differently. But I think there are good initiatives, what at least President von der Leyen is trying to do with the new college. She's trying to invite the young people to be present and engage on all the possible political domains and to debate from, I don't know, social agenda to defense. So maybe this is the way to do that. But I agree that traveling across Europe is a huge incentive for youngsters to be engaged in European politics in general. But I just wanted to come back a little bit to geopolitics. We had a really good discussion here about geopolitics, and I think you Marco, mentioned about either joining European Union or it would have been difficult to be on our own. You mentioned like this. I think that for us, looking what's happening in our part of Europe and what's happening with Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, I think that we have a historic window, small historic window, to join this union, because I cannot imagine that we could have been on our own, what is happening now. And I think there is nothing to invent here. Sun Tzu have already invented. If you want peace, you need to prepare for war. And this is what is happening in Europe. And we need to wake up finally. Because I think that if we have not been in this union, we would have been challenged to be in the other union that we already left, and we have never want to come back.
Let's hope it's not too late.
Let's hope it's not too late.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Cyprus on this topic.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, I think not only taking into consideration the concerns of young Europeans, but also engaging them is a priority. They need to feel invested and they need to feel included. And I think if we look at the surveys that have been taken, as well as the interaction with young people, they point to migration, climate change, economic policy as the most important current political issues in the EU for the younger generation. Unemployment, housing costs, living standards, as well as the financial dependency constitute, I think, young Europeans' main concerns, and it's a major challenge for them. And I think collectively the European Union has been trying to deal with these issues. The Strategic Agenda 2024-2029, or the EU Youth Strategy 2019 to 2027 proposes that particular attention is given to them and how further we can engage. And I would agree with those who have spoken before, programs such as Erasmus, okay, which I think is one of the major success stories of the European Union, is one that we need to make sure that we don't just stay with what we have, but see how we can make it even more attractive to the youth. So my message would be that the youth is the future, and they need to be included, they need to be invested, but with inclusion and investment comes also responsibility. So there's a package there that we have to see how we work with the young Europeans going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Slovenia.
Thank you very much. Well, Erasmus was mentioned. Simonas doesn't know I did my Erasmus here in Lithuania, which was great. But speaking a little bit more broadly, I think the youth in Europe has basically the same problems and challenges as everybody else. What we want is we want to live in a safe and secure environment, and we want to live in a prosperous society. And we expect European Union to provide all of this. But let's put this into a wider perspective, okay? How much do we pay for European Union? The budget of European Union is a little bit more than 1% of average of our GDPs. So if you think of how much every European or average European citizen pays for European Union, from each 1,000 euros that you earn, you pay 10 euros for the working of the European Union. So that's much less than your internet provider bill, for example. So we pay 10 euros from 1,000 for the functioning of European Union, and we expect European Union to solve and address all the issues and all the challenges that we are facing. Let's paraphrase John F. Kennedy's speech. Don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The same goes for European Union. Let's ask ourselves, and I think the young generation should be the first to ask themselves the same question, what we should do for the European Union in order that we have a union of countries that will help us provide all of this, that will help us address all these challenges. We have I think it's we mentioned already, it's from history showed that it's an organization that it's excellent, that had so many successes that's prevented war on European soil among the European countries. But we need to, change the perspective and ask what more should we do to enforce this European Union in order to address all these challenges that we will be facing from now on. Environment, technology challenges, how to compete with multinational companies when it comes to big data, artificial intelligence, and so on. Competition, how we will compete with others around the world, how we are going to compete with US, with China, with Brazil, and so on. I mean, those are big, big questions, and we need to invest into European Union in order to help us to solve all these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Poland?
I would say, first, listen to young people. Because we know, seems to everybody has the answer, but I think firstly we should listen to them. And at the beginning, you said that before a discussion with us, you had a discussion with the students, and I wonder what were the answers from the students, and I would really be happy to know them. So first listen to them, then I think we need to use in EU simple language. We now live in a times of social media. Oh, there's something going on here. Good morning. I will go on then, yes? So, first listen to young people, then try to use much simpler language in a communication. Since we live in a world of social media, of very short messages, our average attention to one issue is about 7-8 seconds. And what we offer as the EU and as the Eurocrats, we offer lecturers difficult wording, difficult conclusions, and of course this is very important since it's not easy to have a conclusion of 27 member states, and we need long documents. But at the end of the day, we need to find a way how to explain it in one sentence. And that will be the way to get to the hearts of young people, especially that what I mentioned already in my first speech about the fake news, those guys who are producing the fake news, those guys who are saying fake informations about EU and online, they already know the way. They are already using a simple language. Another issue, I think, especially in our countries where the young people got used to that they are part of EU because they don't remember the word that they were not part of EU, I think simplicity of showing what the world could look like if they were not a part of the EU. And what I'm trying to repeat in Poland to people who are thinking about leaving EU, great, but imagine what would happen if we are not part of the EU and the aggression of Russia on Ukraine still going on. Where would we be? We can discuss about burdens, we can discuss about the length of the cucumber, that these are the disadvantages of being EU. But at the end of the day, the EU was creating to have a peace on our continent, and you cannot wage those two issues. So, and I think there's also a big challenge facing us, as we talked about the enlargement. Again, we will have a discussion here about the advantages or disadvantages of enlargement in the old member states. And now our role is changing. I'm pretty sure that the discussion will be like copy-paste that what we had before 2004. There was a big issue in France about Polish plumber who will come and steal all the jobs in France. And we will have the same discussions. They are starting already in Poland about Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure that you have the same in your countries. We need to be prepared for that. But again, to understand young people, not offer them something that we think they need. Firstly, listen to them and then create a solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Hungary, Malta, Estonia, and Slovakia. I would ask for 1 minute each, please.
We're just getting started, as I'm feeling it. Few brief comments. Student exchange, absolutely, even though it surprised me quite a lot that because of some of the political disagreements we have with the European Commission, they decided to exclude tens of thousands of Hungarian students who are not even our voters from the Erasmus program, but anyway, it's a good thing after all. I think when it comes to the EU and young people, we have to do a bit of expectation management, that what the EU can do for them, and whether that's something which adds something to their personal lives. Because what young people want, they want to have a job, they want to have somewhere to live, they might want to have families, we don't know, it's up to them. And how the EU can help them in achieving these goals, I think is a major question, not only because of the division of labor we have between the European level and the national level, but also because what difference it can make if the EU starts a housing program for all the 27 member states, and what kind of difference it makes in the city of Coimbra, for example, how many flats that means here. I'm very much for the larger inclusion of young people in the political discourse, even though I would like to warn you that young people tend to be rebels and they like to challenge the status quo quite often. So whether and how we would like to have them in the conversation, I think is a very good question, but they're going to take over the mantle also from me in about 20, 30 years, so we better get them prepared to face the realities of what it makes to do politics on the European level. And maybe a personal observation at the end, I think if the EU would do its job well, it would be barely noticeable for the citizens of the EU, because it would just serve them well. It wouldn't be a subject of intense political discourse, it wouldn't be about service delivery, it would be about making all of the EU citizens' everyday lives much better, much more smooth, like with the roaming charges, for example. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Malta?
So I will pick up on some comments from previous panelists. It's true, there's a generational gap, and there's certainly a huge difference in the way we communicate, in the way we understand things, and I can see it from the younger generation that are coming into the service, in the Maltese public service as well. So I would certainly say that, yes, there's a huge difference in the way that we have to get our message across. Firstly, of course, we have to listen, but also try to engage more young people. I would say that we have the right platform to do this. We have certainly a good basis of European integration, and we certainly have a good framework to work with. But let's not forget also the numerous challenges that we're facing: demographic challenges, the dual transition, the gaps that exist between generations, and I want to draw on a point also. The development within the European Commission, the fact that President-elect von der Leyen felt the need of having a special commissioner focusing on intergenerational fairness, who would be the Maltese nominee, coincidentally. I think that it is also a sign that we have to act more efficiently and do more with less effort. Basically, this is, I think, the younger generations are more focused on getting things done without all the niceties. And I think my colleague mentioned this before me. We have to do things less complicated and also focus on getting there faster.
Thank you very much. Estonia?
Thank you. My daughter is 17, and she just recently read George Orwell at high school. So that provided a nice opportunity to have a discussion about what kind of societies exist and what is the value of the kind of democratic, open society that we live in. I've had a hard time explaining to her that I grew up in a society that was pretty Orwellian. And it's something that the younger generation finds very hard to imagine that this can actually exist. Today, we also have totalitarian regimes in other parts of the world. So somehow we need to try to get this basic understanding also to the younger generation, that the values that we have in the EU is not something that we can take for granted. They need to be maintained, they need to be defended. And then there are all these little practical things like roaming charges, where of course the EU can do a better job in making people aware of the benefits. And my final point is echoing the Polish. This is something where our politicians and the EU and member states both are struggling to kind of adapt and find new ways to reach out to the younger generation, to make them kind of interested and follow issues that concern our like political decision-making. But then also the other side of the coin is that media literacy has become more important than ever. And that's where we need to invest and learn from each other among member states on how to do it, how to make sure that our children kind of understand what kind of information is available out there and how they can make a distinction between reliable sources and non-reliable sources. And that's something where, of course, it's very much national measures that have to be taken, but we need to also have a discussion about this and coordination in the EU and learning of best practices. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Slovakia.
I'm happy to complete this round. Well, I would just fully agree with those speakers that pointed out to the what is well functioning, and this is the Erasmus+. We should further develop it, strengthen it, because this is really one of the most prominent and successful programs that EU have, very visible as well. And then I also agree with a Polish colleague that we should listen to young people, to young generation, and to understand much better what really matters to them. And from that point of view, I welcome what the new Commission is planning to establish in first 100 days the youth policy dialogues, which should really be about listening to young generation. Also, the President of the Commission should be advised by the Youth Advisory Board, which is also a very good idea to further develop. And what my Maltese colleague mentioned, the intergenerational fairness is very important agenda, I do believe that, because the communication between the current and the future, the young generation, and how to strengthen the communication is really important. And then also those generations should be taken, or their views should be taken into account when policy in the policy making and law making. And one issue that also was mentioned here is the impact of social media, because I think that this is already getting very critical, and member states are looking at it also from the point of view of cyberbullying, for example. And this is also something that I think that it would be good to have also an EU action, and maybe not the legislation, but at least to have some European view on these challenges that our young generation is really facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you all agreed that we had a very interesting discussion. Many interesting thoughts and points were brought to the table. I want to thank all the members of the panel for their excellent contributions. I was asked to moderate this panel and to finish at 11:45. I think we have, you know, the Portuguese don't have exactly the best reputation when it comes to time management, but I'm trying to correct that. So on behalf of the organization, thank you very much, and we leave the floor to the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, and to all the representatives. For the closing remarks, we invite His Excellency, the Minister of State and Foreign Affairs of Portugal, Paulo Rangel.
Dear Rector of the University of Coimbra, dear Professor Dr. Amílcar Falcão, government representatives of the 10 countries that joined the European Union in 2004, ministers, deputy ministers, secretary of state, ambassadors, dear director of the Faculty of Law of the University of Coimbra, my dear good friend, Professor Jonatas Machado, director of the Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences of the University of Coimbra, vice director of the Faculty of Pharmacy of the University of Coimbra, vice director of the Faculty of Economy of the University of Coimbra, president of the European Students Association of Coimbra, representatives from the Coimbra Academic Association and Erasmus Student Network of Coimbra, estimated professors, students, staff, esteemed journalists. Let me start only to say that for me it is always a huge privilege and honor to be at Coimbra University, where I have passed some years, not as a usual student, but in masters, and especially in a huge and very intense contact with the law faculty and with the community of professors of the law faculty. I have here some of my most important personal, not professional, references and very, very, very dear good friends. And so I won't choose any name because this would be unfair, because the number is quite huge of people that were essential for my education, for my formation, and also for my personal profile. This is a very, very unique institution, and I would like to pay tribute in this very occasion. Then let me say that it could seem a coincidence, a happy one, that this year we celebrate 50 years since the revolution that brought Portugal democracy and the start of a return to Europe, and also 20 years since the round of enlargement that brought nations long oppressed by an iron ideology back to the European family and to the European project. This, however, is no coincidence. Francis Fukuyama begins his famous End of History with an account of the Carnation Revolution and the impact that this democratic transition, like the Spanish and the Greek ones, which took place almost at the same time, had on the countries beyond the Iron Curtain and on their own transitions triggered by these people's indomitable spirit of freedom, hope, democracy, and by the very collapse of the regime that oppressed them. Fukuyama wrote in the 90s that the current crisis of authoritarianism did not begin with Gorbachev's perestroika or the fall of the Berlin Wall. It started over 1.5 decades earlier with the fall of a series of right-wing authoritarian governments in southern Europe. In 1974, the Caetano Salazar regime in Portugal was ousted in an army coup. After a period of instability, verging on civil war, the socialist Mário Soares was elected prime minister in April 1976, and the country has seen peaceful democratic rule ever since. The colonels, who have been ruling Greece since 1967, were ousted also in 1974, giving away the popularly elected Karamanlis regime. And in 1975, General Francisco Franco died in Spain, paving the way for a remarkably peaceful transition to democracy 2 years later. Since then, these countries have held regular, free, multi-party elections. These words, quoted, these words, which so aptly reflect the democratic processes in Southern Europe, apply in equal measure to those that took place in Central and Eastern Europe in the late 80s and early 90s. Democratic consolidations in the West and East are therefore inseparable as the enlargement in 1986 and 2004. The effects of enlargement in Portugal and Spain, the consolidation not only of democracy but also of our economies, were more than perfectly replicated in the countries that joined the European Union in 2004. In fact, over the last 2 decades, these 10 European Union member states have developed their economies much faster than the European average. 2004 was therefore a turning point. But more than that, 2004 was a year of true reconciliation for Europe. Reconciliation with the East and the Slavic world, with Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, with Slovenia. It also opened the window of hope for the Balkans after the war in former Yugoslavia. Reconciliation also with the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, which more directly than anyone else felt the weight of Soviet oppression. By the way, when I was a child, at home, we used to have an old map with small animals in each country of Europe from the 1920s. And there were Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, which did not show up in other, more recent maps at school. And my father always used to point to them and explain, these are independent countries. They are occupied by Soviet Union. So back then, all the way across at the other end of Europe, we were fully aware of your countries and of your history. Also reconciliation with the Magyar world, with Hungary, and with its unique heritage, starting with the Finno-Ugric language and the capacity to link East and West. A reconciliation with the southernmost Mediterranean, with Malta and Cyprus, returning to the very origins of Europe and its myth coming from Phoenicia, from Lebanon. Zeus, the white bull, the Princess Europa, just as Ulysses, Odysseus, returned to Ithaca in the ancient Mediterranean, so Europe returned to these islands in our common sea. There is no Europe without these contributions. Not even in our best dreams, when we, people like me, with my age, we were 10 years old, 78. And even when we were 20 years old, 88, not even in our best dreams, we could aspire to this. Without these 74 million European citizens who joined this family simultaneously, without the Slavic, Baltic, Ugric, Finno-Ugric, Greek, Semitic languages, without the diversity of religious confessions, without the millennia-old history of all these peoples, without their culture, their experiences, their aspirations, there would be no true Europe. 2004 was also the time to contemplate not only those who returned to Europe, but also those needed to complete it. And here we catch a glimpse of Bulgaria and Romania joining in 2007 and Croatia in 2013. Here again, this reconciliation with the Slavic world of Bulgaria, with the old Latin world of Romania, and the promise of a European future for the Balkans, again with Croatia. It has been 11 years then since the last accession, 8 years since the only and very regrettable exit. 2024 marks the start of a new institutional cycle, the first for some time in which enlargement is no longer just a faint possibility, but a necessity, an imperative, a geostrategic imperative. And the lessons, the example from this 2004 enlargement will be crucial, will be essential to prepare the Union and the future member states for the new accessions. Just as the democratic transitions in Portugal and Spain and Greece were examples for the countries emerging from communism, the success of your development, your economy, and your European reintegration is already serving as an inspiration and a model for the Western Balkans, Ukraine, Moldova, and hopefully so Georgia, which last weekend, by the way, in the case of Moldova, was reconfirmed with a pro-European orientation despite the very well-known attempts of disinformation and destabilization. And we do need to understand enlargement, not merely as a technocratic process, or even a simple moral imperative, but as a geostrategic step. Indeed, we owe it to the Western Balkans to fulfill the promises we made. And we have the moral imperative to allow Ukraine, which is fighting a terrible war because of its European Union orientation, to join our family. But more than that, this is not only deserved or a moral imperative, it is also in our interest. Let's look at Portugal and its own interests, particularly in foreign policy. As an Atlantic and very much Atlanticist country, there are many that say that Portugal should be reluctant into allowing the European Union to take new members and move to the east, as it would make us even more peripheral, and arguing that the center of power would move away from us. But that is not the case. We only need to look at the enlargement in 2004. The 10 countries that joined the European Union then, 2004, are some of the most pro-Atlantic countries in the Union. and that moves the center of power into the Atlantic towards the transatlantic ties, where we, Portugal, have a central position. This is what is going to happen with the new enlargements. If we believe in an Atlantic Europe, we need enlargement. Dear Rector, dear Excellencies, the 20 years of enlargement are an important and special moment. They are a resounding success for the peoples of Europe and the world. Indeed, there is no better proof of this success story than the fact that today no one can conceive Europe, European Union, without these 10 countries. Can you imagine European Union without Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Chéquia, Slovakia, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, Malta, Cyprus? There is anyone, is there, that can believe in a Europe without these members, without these partners? There is now, after 20 years, a profound feeling of identity, integration, and belonging with the European Union. Now is the time to celebrate this 20-year cycle. But, and here I conclude, we also have to prepare University of Coimbra for next year, when we celebrate the 40-year anniversary of the signing of the Section Treaty to the European Communities by Portugal and Spain, and their accession itself back in 1985 and 1986. It will be another movement for marking this historic process, which is ours, but is also yours. As my dear friend Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, uses to say, long live Europe.
Thank you. Lastly, we invite the Rector of the University of Coimbra, Professor Amilcar Falcão, to deliver the closing speech.
Good morning to all. Well, I have the same problem with glasses. Your Excellency, the Minister of State and Foreign Affairs of Portugal, and at this moment let me acknowledge your kind words for the University of Coimbra. As you know, it's always a pleasure to receive you here in this house, which is also your house. Thank you very much. Government representatives of 10 countries that joined the European Union in 2004, Mrs. Secretary of State for European Affairs, President and Coordinator of Parliament, Committee on European Affairs, ambassadors of 10 countries that joined the European Union in 2004, Vice Rector for External Relations and Alumni, my friend João Nuno Calvão da Silva, Director of Faculty of Law of the University of Coimbra, Director of Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences of our university, Vice Directors of Faculties of Arts and Humanities, Faculty of Pharmacy and Faculty of Economics of our university, President of European Studies Association of Coimbra, representatives from Coimbra Academic Association and the Erasmus Student Network of Coimbra, esteemed professors, students and staff, journalists. Let me start by thanking the ambassadors of the 10 countries that joined the European Union 20 years ago for today's conference. Thank you for honoring us, for choosing the University of Coimbra as the host. I would like to thank the ministers and other organizations representing these 10 countries who gave great speeches in a debate excellently moderated by Jonathan Machado, director of our Faculty of Law and professor of European Union Law. And a final thank you for the prestigious presence and speech by our government officials, the Secretary of State for European Affairs, Inês Domingos, and the Minister of State and Foreign Affairs, Paulo Rangel. The University of Coimbra is one of the oldest in the world, 735 years old on the next 1st of March. A university open to the world with 120 nationalities studying at our 8 faculties and numerous research centers. A cosmopolitan university because it is founded on the values of tolerance, integration and dialogue. These are also core values of European integration, a project in which we all see ourselves and consider fundamental in an increasingly dangerous world. Days like these are fundamental for our young people, and I thank our students for their presence here today. You are the purpose of the university, and it is in this free and democratic environment that we must be educated for life as citizens who are aware that the European Union and democracy should not be taken for granted, and that we must always fight for them. Thank you all.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now have the pleasure of enjoying a musical performance by the choir of the former Ophionists of the University of Coimbra.